What if I told you there's a book so ancient, so powerful, so utterly revealing, that the Roman Empire and the church that inherited its power did everything in their might to wipe it clean from history? A book the apostles knew, that early Christians revered. That's directly quoted in your own Bible. And yet, it was erased from collective memory for over 1,000 years. This book isn't some urban legend or conspiracy theory. It's real. It's called the Book of Enoch. And its very survival? That's one of the most extraordinary miracles in religious history. Picture a text, penned centuries before Christ, laying out the Son of Man on a throne of glory, judging nations. A text that chronicles celestial angels descending to earth, breaking divine law, and handing down forbidden knowledge to humanity. A text that rips open the secrets of the cosmos, the mechanics of heaven, the fate of souls beyond the grave. This text wasn't some whispered myth. It was real. It was revered. It was copied with devotion. And then, as Christianity cemented its place as the Roman Empire's official religion, it began to vanish. Copies were systematically destroyed or simply stopped being made. References to it turned hostile. The councils tasked with defining what texts were sacred deliberately left it out. Within a few centuries, the Book of Enoch became a ghost story, a rumor of something that supposedly existed, but that no one could actually get their hands on. But truth has a hell of a way of surviving. While Rome and its ecclesiastical heirs were systematically scrubbing the Book of Enoch from the West, an isolated church in the remote mountains of Ethiopia was preserving it. Generation after generation, devout monks painstakingly copied the sacred text, keeping it alive when the entire Western world had forgotten it. And in the caves of Qumran, by the Dead Sea, fragments of the book patiently waited to be unearthed, buried for 2 millennia, ready to confirm that what Ethiopia had safeguarded was indeed genuine, ancient, and undeniably authentic. The rediscovery of the Book of Enoch is a story of survival against all odds, of a truth that flat out refuses to die, of knowledge that finds a way to surface, no matter how much power is thrown at suppressing it. Today, we're going to dig into this extraordinary narrative. We're going to uncover what this book held that made it so dangerous. We're going to figure out why Rome wanted it gone, and we're going to celebrate how it survived, against all logic. We're not here to attack any faith or to sow destructive doubts. We're here to honor a truth that deserves to be known, to acknowledge that the story of sacred scriptures is far more complex, more fascinating, and richer than what we're typically taught. The Book of Enoch isn't just some historical curiosity. It's a first-hand account of how early Christianity understood the cosmos, evil, and salvation. It's a window into a spiritual world that was slammed shut but never fully sealed. It's an invitation to deepen our understanding of the traditions that have shaped our civilization. Are you ready to dive into the apocryphal gospel that slipped through Rome's grasp? Are you curious enough to explore what power tried to keep hidden? Are you prepared for a journey that will transform your understanding of biblical history? Because what's coming next isn't speculation or fantasy. It's documented history, textual evidence, a living tradition. And it will forever change how you view the formation of the sacred canon. The Book of Enoch survived, and today, its secrets are out there for anyone with the guts to look for them. Come with me. The journey starts now. To truly grasp how the Book of Enoch managed to survive Rome's grip, we first need to get a handle on what this text was and why it mattered so much to ancient religious communities. Enoch is an enigmatic figure from Genesis. The biblical text gives us just a few lines. He lived 365 years, walked with God, and then vanished because God took him. Unlike every other patriarch, Enoch didn't die. He was taken straight to heaven. This singularity absolutely captivated the imagination of Jewish communities during the Second Temple period. If Enoch had walked with God and been whisked away to the heavens, what had he seen up there? What secrets was he privy to? What revelations had he received? The answer came in the form of apocalyptic literature, a genre that truly exploded between the 3rd century BCE and the 1st century CE. These texts aim to pull back the curtain on the mysteries of the cosmos, the destiny of humanity, the secrets of the celestial world, and the Book of Enoch became the most significant of the bunch. What we call the Book of Enoch today, or more technically, 1st Enoch, is actually a compilation of writings put together at different times. Experts pinpoint at least 5 main sections: the Book of the Watchers, the Parables of Enoch, the Astronomical Book, the Book of Dreams, and the Epistle of Enoch. Each section tackles different yet interconnected themes: the origins of evil through angelic transgression, the secrets of celestial movements, visions of the final judgment, revelations about the coming Messiah. Together, they form a comprehensive cosmology that both complements and expands the biblical narrative. The communities at Qumran, where the famous Dead Sea Scrolls were unearthed, held this text in particularly high esteem. More fragments of Enoch have been found in those caves than of many books now considered canonical. For the Essenes, the Book of Enoch was undisputed sacred scripture. Early Christians inherited this veneration. The Epistle of Jude, part of the New Testament, directly quotes the Book of Enoch, treating it as authentic prophecy. Several early church fathers, including Tertullian, Irenaeus, and Clement of Alexandria, cited it with respect and deemed it valuable to the faith. For the first 3 centuries of Christianity, the Book of Enoch circulated widely. It wasn't some fringe text or suspect document. It was a cherished part of the spiritual heritage that believing communities valued. The shift came with Christianity's transformation into an imperial religion. When Constantine legalized the faith and his successors cemented it as the official state religion, the need to define orthodoxy became critical. Which texts were truly sacred? Which should be read in churches? Which needed to be tossed aside? The councils tackling these questions operated under multiple pressures. Imperial unity demanded a unified religion. Episcopal authority needed clear channels of revelation. The diversity that had defined early Christianity suddenly became a major headache. In this climate, the Book of Enoch got sidelined, not because it was unknown or outright fake, but for other reasons we'll delve into later. Gradually, copies stopped being produced in the West. References turned hostile. The text morphed into legend. But in Ethiopia, where Christianity had arrived before these processes of exclusion were completed, the Book of Enoch was never questioned. It remained part of the sacred canon, revered and preserved to this very day. If this journey into the Book of Enoch and its extraordinary survival is challenging what you thought you knew, just imagine everything else there is to uncover. This channel exists to explore the hidden truths of religious history, to honor the texts that survived against all odds, to seek genuine knowledge about our spiritual traditions. Join this community of explorers by hitting that subscribe button. We don't promise easy answers, but we do promise an honest journey into truths that deserve to be known. Now, let's keep digging into what this extraordinary text actually contains. The contents of the Book of Enoch explain both its initial fascination and its eventual suppression. What this text laid bare was just too powerful, too challenging, too uncontrollable for the emerging power structures. The most famous section, the Book of the Watchers, offers a dramatic expansion of that enigmatic passage in Genesis where the sons of God took wives from among the daughters of men. Where the canonical Bible gives us just a few mysterious verses, Enoch unpacks an entire cosmology of the origin of evil. According to the text, 200 celestial angels, called Watchers because their job was to observe and guard, descended to Mount Hermon. They made a mutual pact, swearing to each other with curses that they would complete their transgression. They took human wives and fathered giants who brought destruction to the earth. But the most disturbing revelation isn't the sexual transgression. It's the knowledge these angels passed on. The text specifically details what they taught. Azazel unveiled metallurgy for making swords and knives, bracelets and ornaments, the use of antimony, and the beautification of eyelids. Other angels taught enchantments, root cutting, astrology, celestial signs. This narrative frames technological and cultural progress as the direct result of cosmic transgression. It wasn't natural human ingenuity that developed these arts. It was forbidden revelation from beings who abandoned their celestial post. Knowledge itself becomes ambiguous, potentially dangerous, morally charged. The implications for power structures are pretty clear. If knowledge has dark origins, then whoever controls what's known wields spiritual authority. Institutions that regulate information can claim they're protecting humanity from dangerous insights. It's not hard to see how religious authorities would find that mighty convenient. The sections on celestial journeys expand the cosmology even further. Enoch is whisked through the different heavens, guided by angels who reveal the universe's secrets. He sees the prisons where the transgressing angels await eternal judgment. He beholds the storehouses of winds, rains, snows. He observes the mechanisms governing the sun and moon. This direct access to the divine, without institutional intermediaries, represents a model of spirituality that threatens any hierarchical structure. If an ancient patriarch can receive revelations of such magnitude by simply walking with God, what authority do bishops or popes have to dictate what's true and what isn't? The parables of Enoch introduce the figure of the Son of Man with unequivocally messianic characteristics. This being pre-exists creation. He was chosen and hidden in the presence of the Lord of Spirits before the sun and stars even existed. He will sit on a throne of glory to judge all nations. When Jesus used the title Son of Man in the Gospels, his first-century listeners likely had these traditions squarely in mind. The title wasn't some humble expression. It was a cosmic identity claim with extraordinary implications. The text also contains direct social critiques. The rich who oppress the poor will be stripped bare. Kings who abuse their power will be humbled. Those who unjustly hoarded wealth will face judgment without mercy. These promises of eschatological reversal carried revolutionary implications. When Christianity became the empire's religion, when bishops advised emperors and the church accumulated property, was a text promising judgment against the powerful of the earth really convenient? The answer seems pretty obvious. To truly understand the Book of Enoch and why it survived against all odds, we need to examine some fundamental concepts that are often misunderstood. The first crucial concept is apocalyptic. In popular usage, this word is tied to destruction and catastrophe, but its original meaning is simply revelation, from the Greek apocalypsis. Apocalyptic literature is literature of revelation, texts that aim to pull back the curtain between the visible and the invisible. The Book of Enoch is apocalyptic in this primary sense. It reveals what's hidden, the origins of evil, the mechanisms of the cosmos, the destiny of the righteous and the wicked, the secrets of the celestial world. It's not primarily about the end of the world, but about the deep structure of reality. This type of literature flourished during periods of crisis, when conventional explanations just didn't cut it. The suffering of the righteous, the apparent triumph of the wicked, the oppression of the powerful, all of it cried out for an explanation. Apocalyptic literature offered answers that placed the present within a larger cosmic framework. The second fundamental concept is the Son of Man. In Aramaic, bar enash literally means son of human, an expression that could refer to any human being. But in the context of the parables of Enoch, this figure takes on extraordinary cosmic dimensions. This Son of Man isn't simply human. He pre-exists creation. He's chosen before the sun and stars even exist. He will judge all nations. The kings of the earth will tremble before him. The connection to the descriptions of Jesus in the Gospels and Revelation is undeniable. Some scholars propose that early Christianity developed its Christology using the framework Enoch provided. Others suggest that the parables themselves were influenced by Christian beliefs. The debate rages on, but the profound connection between these texts is indisputable. The third concept worth noting is pseudepigraphy. Many ancient texts, including the Book of Enoch, were written under the name of revered figures from the past. This wasn't considered fraud in the modern sense. It was a literary convention that expressed continuity with tradition. Attributing revelations to Enoch meant connecting them to the most primordial era, pre-flood, pre-Abraham, pre-Moses. The message gained authority through its supposed antiquity. This practice was accepted and understood by ancient readers. The fourth key concept is the distinction between canonical and true. Just because a text isn't in the canon doesn't automatically mean it's false or worthless. The canon represents historical decisions about which texts to use in liturgies and what to consider authoritative. But texts outside the canon can be ancient, revered by significant communities, and profoundly influential. The Book of Enoch is a perfect example of this. It's not in the Western canon, but it's undeniably ancient, was revered by early Christians, and deeply influenced the New Testament. Its exclusion from the canon doesn't invalidate it. It simply reflects decisions made in specific historical contexts. We've just seen how fundamental concepts like the apocalyptic, the Son of Man, pseudepigraphy, and the relationship between canon and truth help us make sense of the Book of Enoch. But I gotta ask, which of these revelations hit you the hardest? Did you understand the difference between canonical and true? Did you know the original meaning of apocalyptic? Drop a comment below. I love reading your thoughts, and who knows, maybe your comment will spark the next topic we explore together. Now, let's dig even deeper into this extraordinary story. To fully appreciate how the Book of Enoch managed to survive Rome's reach, we need to plunge ourselves into the world that produced it and the worlds that kept it safe. The Second Temple period, roughly from the return from Babylonian exile to the temple's destruction in 70 CE, was a time of spiritual upheaval for the Jewish people. They lived under foreign domination: Persians, Greeks, Romans. Their political independence was a distant memory or a future dream. In this context of oppression and hope, apocalyptic literature emerged. It wasn't naive escapism, but an attempt to find meaning. If God is just, why do the faithful suffer? If Israel is chosen, why is it subjugated? Apocalyptic answers placed the present within a cosmic narrative where the ultimate triumph of justice was guaranteed. The Book of Enoch sprang from communities that felt marginalized even within Judaism. The constant references to righteous versus sinners didn't just distinguish between Israel and the nations. They also reflected internal conflicts, divisions between different visions of faithfulness to tradition. The communities at Qumran represent the clearest example. They had broken away from the temple in Jerusalem, which they considered corrupted. They anticipated a divine intervention that would vindicate their position and punish their enemies, including the Jewish religious establishment. For them, the Book of Enoch wasn't just entertainment. It was urgent revelation. Geography played a role. Mount Hermon, where the Watchers reportedly descended, was the tallest mountain in the region, visible from miles around, and associated with the divine in multiple cultures. Choosing this spot connected the narrative to known sacred geographies. References to specific technologies the angels taught reflect the historical context. Metallurgy, cosmetics, astrology. These were all arts associated with the Hellenistic civilization that was reshaping the Eastern world. Attributing their origin to fallen angels was a form of cultural resistance, a way to process the threat of foreign influences. Early Christianity inherited this text and its world of meanings. The first believers, mostly Jewish, were familiar with Enochic traditions. When they heard talk of the Son of Man or of angels who sinned, they had frames of reference that we often lack today. The Ethiopian Church, which would eventually become the sole guardian of the complete text, had its own roots that primed it for this preservation. Christianity arrived in Ethiopia in the 4th century, but connections to Israelite traditions run even deeper. Ethiopia claims descent from King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. Their national epic, the Kebra Nagast, tells how their son Menelik brought the Ark of the Covenant to Ethiopia. These traditions, whether historically verifiable or not, forged a religious identity that felt like a direct heir to Israel. When Christianity arrived, it found fertile ground. Circumcision was already practiced. Dietary distinctions were in place. A connection to the God of Abraham was already claimed. The Book of Enoch, deeply Jewish in its roots, fit perfectly into this tradition. Ethiopian monasteries developed an extraordinary culture of preservation. In inaccessible locations, communities of monks dedicated generations to copying sacred texts. Ge'ez, the liturgical language, acquired a sacredness that protected the manuscripts from casual alteration. While Rome was deciding that the Book of Enoch didn't belong in the canon, Ethiopia simply kept on venerating it as they always had. There was no dramatic confrontation or conscious rejection of Western decisions. Simply put, the decisions of distant councils held no sway over the Ethiopian mountains. The story of the Book of Enoch can be told as both tragedy and triumph. A tragedy of a text nearly lost, a triumph of improbable survival. For the first 3 centuries of Christianity, the Book of Enoch enjoyed widespread circulation and respect. The direct quote in the Epistle of Jude gave it a stamp of authenticity. This book, it wasn't just some dusty scroll. It packed a punch, almost sacred. Church fathers quoted it. Communities devoured it. No one saw it headed for the deep freeze. Tertullian, back in the early 3rd century, he was its biggest fan. Argued its survival through the Great Flood itself was proof positive. Said it was prophetic, straight-up word that demanded attention. But then, things started to shift. Slowly, like a shadow creeping in. As Christianity got its act together, got institutionalized, doubts started bubbling up. Origen, he had his questions. Augustine, he scratched his head wondering how an antediluvian text could have even made it. And Jerome, The guy who gave us the standard Latin translation. He flat out gave it the boot. The councils that hammered out the official canon in the 4th and 5th centuries. Enoch didn't make the cut. Reasons? A mixed bag, not always adding up. Its wild cosmology was a headache for the new doctrines. Its ties to Gnostic groups? That was like a criminal record. And its whole direct revelation thing? A direct threat to institutional power, plain and simple. By the 5th century, the Book of Enoch was basically a ghost in the West. Greek copies? Vanished. Mentions of it? Hostile. Or just plain confusing. The text became a whispered rumor, a story about something that used to exist, but no one could actually get their hands on. Meanwhile, down in Ethiopia, nothing changed. That book kept getting copied, read, worshipped. Every monk generation passed it down like it was gold, same as the Gospels. For them, no difference. It was all sacred scripture. End of story. 1,000 years, folks. A whole millennium this went on. The West forgot. Ethiopia remembered. This knowledge, this crucial piece of the puzzle, survived tucked away in those African mountains, while Europe barely knew it had ever existed. The cold case started heating up in the 18th century. A Scottish explorer, James Bruce, after years crisscrossing Ethiopia, finally brought a stack of Ge'ez manuscripts of Enoch back to Europe. For the first time in over 1,000 years, Western scholars could actually read the whole damn thing. The impact? Huge. Scholars instantly saw it was a game changer for understanding intertestamental Judaism and the very roots of Christianity. Translations exploded. The Book of Enoch, once a myth, became a verified document, right there for anyone to see. Then came the smoking gun. The Dead Sea Scrolls, unearthed in 1947. Aramaic fragments found in the Qumran caves. They matched the Ethiopian version, practically word for word. Proved it wasn't some medieval hoax. This was the real deal, an ancient original, faithfully preserved. Today, the Book of Enoch holds a unique spot, universally recognized as an invaluable historical document, canonical for the Ethiopian Church, a magnet for spiritual seekers worldwide. The text Rome tried to bury, it's out there now, more available than ever. The story of Enoch isn't just about survival. It's about transformation, about misunderstandings, about outright appropriation. Peeling back these layers helps us see not just what made it, but what got lost or twisted along the way. First layer of transformation, language. Originally penned in Aramaic, maybe some Hebrew bits, then translated to Greek, way back when. From Greek, it jumped to Ethiopian Ge'ez. Each jump, a new set of choices, new interpretations. Those Aramaic fragments from Qumran, they're our Rosetta Stone, letting us check the translations. The Ethiopian version? Pretty damn faithful. But yeah, there are variations. Some of the original flavor, some of the nuances, probably got blurred or changed in the handoff. Second layer, editorial decisions. The Book of Enoch we've got, it's a mashup of different writings. The astronomical book might be the oldest. The parables, maybe the new kid on the block. Who decided to stitch them together? What was the rationale? And what other parts just didn't make it? The missing parables in the Qumran fragments? That's a hot topic, a real head-scratcher. Were they written later? Do they reek of Christian influence? Or did the Qumran community just not bother including them? The answers to those questions? They totally shift how we see Enoch's connection to early Christianity. Third layer, interpretation. Every crew that read this text saw it through their own lens. Second Temple Jews read it one way, early Christians another, Gnostics, a whole different ballgame. The Ethiopians, they cooked up their own interpretive traditions. When the West finally got its hands on it again, more layers piled on. 19th century academics brought their own baggage. Theologians weighed it with their denominational scales. Spiritual seekers, they just grabbed it and ran with it for whatever they wanted. Today, new distortions are a real threat. In some popular corners, Enoch's being peddled as ancient astronaut revelations. The Watchers? Suddenly they're alien visitors. Forbidden knowledge? That's now lost tech from advanced civilizations. Look, I get it. The text is dramatic, but these readings, they completely ditch the original context. The ancient authors weren't thinking about little green men. They were wrestling with spiritual beings, cosmic sin, the very nature of evil. Slapping modern categories onto it fundamentally warps the meaning. Another common spin, Just as warped is the anti-Christian polemic. Some folks wave Enoch around like it's proof the church always lied, that it's all a big conspiracy, that nothing's trustworthy. That's just as twisted. Texts getting left out of the canon doesn't mean universal bad faith. It means historical decisions were made in specific contexts. Simple as that. The Ethiopian tradition, that's our valuable reality check. For over 15 centuries, their church has read Enoch as sacred scripture. Their interpretations, forged over generations, represent a deep well of accumulated wisdom that most newbie readers just blow past. Getting back to the authentic meaning, that takes some humility. We gotta admit we're late to the party, separated by millennia from the original context. The communities who kept this text alive, they hold insights modern academics often miss, and these contemporary appropriations, as popular as they are, usually twist more than they illuminate. The evidence confirming the Book of Enoch's authenticity and age? It's substantial, folks, and it comes from multiple angles. This text, the one that survived Rome's attempts to erase it, isn't some fantasy or late-game fabrication. It's a genuine ancient document, verified by multiple lines of solid evidence. First, and most dramatic, piece of evidence, the Dead Sea Scrolls. When those Bedouin shepherds stumbled into the Qumran caves in 1947, they hit a textual goldmine that blew open our understanding of ancient Judaism. Among the thousands of fragments, numerous Aramaic manuscripts of the Book of Enoch were identified. These bad boys date from around the 2nd century BC right up to the 1st century AD. Their mere existence proves this text was circulating widely, centuries before Christianity even hit the scene. Comparing those Aramaic fragments with the Ethiopian version, it revealed a remarkable match. The text Ethiopia had safeguarded for over 1,000 years was genuinely ancient, not some medieval fan fiction. The transmission, rock solid. Second line of evidence, straight from the New Testament itself. The Epistle of Jude, verses 14 and 15, quotes the Book of Enoch directly. The author treats it like authentic prophecy, not some old wives' tale or human tradition. That quote? It's huge. A document that would become canonical scripture citing Enoch as a legitimate prophet. That tells you Enoch was known and respected in those early Christian circles. Beyond that explicit quote, specialists have dug up countless allusions in other New Testament texts. The Son of Man language in the Gospels, it echoes Enoch's parables. References to fallen angels in 2 Peter, that screams the Book of the Watchers. Elements in Revelation, they've got Enoch all over them. Third piece of evidence, the Church Fathers. The big names from the first few centuries, they quoted and chewed over Enoch extensively. Tertullian, writing around 200 AD, was a fierce defender. Clement of Alexandria quoted it. Irenaeus mentioned it. Origen knew it, though he had his hang-ups. Even the guys who eventually gave it the boot. They all testified to its existence and its widespread circulation. Fourth line of evidence, the Ethiopian manuscript tradition. The Ge'ez manuscripts we have, they show meticulous transmission over centuries. The consistency between copies from different eras and regions, that's proof of careful scribal work, like a forensic trail. The Ethiopian Church developed systems for textual verification and control. Errors, identified, corrected. The integrity of sacred scripture, guarded like a crown jewel, a matter of faith and duty. Fifth piece of evidence, the internal characteristics of the text itself, the language, the theological concepts, the concerns it reflects, all consistent with the Second Temple Jewish period. Enoch doesn't read like some late-stage fabrication. It reads like a genuine artifact from its actual historical era. Sure, there are still unknowns. The original authors, nobody's got a definitive ID. The exact circumstances of each section's composition, still debated. The process that blended these different writings, not entirely clear. We've walked through some fascinating evidence on the Book of Enoch, but now I want to hear from you. Where are you tuning in from? What city, what state are you joining us from on this deep dive into texts that survived against all odds? Drop your location in the comments. It's wild to see folks from all corners of the globe chasing down the same answers about these ancient mysteries. And now, let's crack open one of the most revealing chapters of this whole story. To really grasp how Rome almost wiped the Book of Enoch off the map, we got to look at the power plays in motion when Christianity went from being hunted down to being the empire's official religion. The 4th century? That changed everything. Constantine didn't just legalize Christianity, he jumped right into its business. Later emperors, even more hands-on. The religion that had survived brutal persecutions now had to navigate the temptations of power itself. An empire needed a unified religion. The wild diversity of early Christianity, all those gospels, all those interpretations, all those texts, that became a problem. They needed to draw lines. What was orthodox? What was heresy? What was in? What was out? Those councils that set the canon, they weren't just gatherings of pure-hearted saints seeking only truth. Nah, they were political battlegrounds, different factions clawing for influence, imperial will throwing its weight around, practical considerations shaping every decision. And the Book of Enoch? It threw a wrench in that whole unification project. First, its model of revelation. Enoch gets direct downloads from God and the angels. No institutional middleman required. He's soaring through the heavens, learning secrets even some angels don't know. That kind of pattern, it legitimized visionary experiences outside the official channels. The bishops were building their power structures, apostolic succession, episcopal authority, council decrees. All of it needed revelation to flow through recognized institutions. A text showing direct revelation to one guy, that threatened their whole monopoly. Second, its wild, elaborate cosmology. Multiple heavens, named angels, elemental depots, celestial mechanics. It was all too much for the theological syntheses they were trying to build. Way easier to work with less speculative texts, you know? Third, its bad company. Gnostics, with their own elaborate cosmologies, found kindred spirits in Enoch. Manichaeans used it. Various sects challenging the emerging orthodoxy quoted it. That kind of association? It was like a black mark on the text in the eyes of the orthodoxy's defenders. Fourth, its social implications. Its denunciations against the rich and powerful. Its promises that kings would be humbled. Its assurances of ultimate reversal. All that hit a little too close to home when the church was cozying up to imperial power. Now let's not oversimplify. It wasn't some shadowy, centralized conspiracy to erase Enoch. The process was gradual, a mosaic of individual decisions. Some leaders genuinely believed they were protecting the faith by sidelining texts they saw as problematic. But the effects? They were real. A text revered for centuries simply vanished from the West. Generations of Christians grew up never knowing it existed. The knowledge it held? Effectively suppressed. Ethiopia, though, it dodged those bullets thanks to its geographic and political isolation. Decisions from faraway councils? They had no sway in the Ethiopian highlands. The Ethiopian Church never became an imperial institution like Rome. It could just keep its inherited traditions without all that pressure to conform. Enoch's survival in Ethiopia wasn't some conscious defiance of Rome. It was just the ongoing beat of a tradition Rome couldn't touch. What Rome wanted to destroy. It survived precisely where Rome's reach ended. Now let's get down to brass tacks. Let's look directly at the actual content of the Book of Enoch, pulling from those primary sources that survived Rome's heavy hand. The text kicks off with solemn words, setting its prophetic stage. The sources tell us Enoch, a righteous man whose eyes were opened by God, spoke and said, "This is the word of blessing with which he blessed the chosen and righteous who will live in the day of tribulation." The Book of the Watchers lays out the angelic transgression in vivid, almost cinematic detail. The sources point to angels, the sons of heaven, who saw and desired the daughters of men. They whispered to each other, "Come, let us choose wives from among the daughters of men and beget us children." Semyaza, their ringleader, was scared he'd be left holding the bag for the sin, so they all swore together, binding themselves with mutual curses. They descended onto the top of Mount Hermon, calling it Hermon because that's where they made their damned oath. The knowledge they dropped, it was specific. The sources tell us Azazel taught men how to forge swords, knives, shields, and breastplates. He showed them metals and how to work them, taught bracelets, ornaments, using antimony, makeup for the eyelids, precious stones, and dyes. Other angels spilled the beans on enchantments and root cutting. Others taught stargazing. Others revealed the moon's path. Impurity ramped up, fornication went wild, and they transgressed and corrupted all their ways. It was chaos. Enoch's celestial road trips. They describe him traversing the cosmos. The sources chronicle him being whisked away to where the heavens complete themselves. He saw the depots of all the winds, gazed upon the cornerstone of the earth, observed the four winds that hold up the earth and the firmament of the sky. The descriptions of judgment sites, spine-chilling. The sources preserve visions of deep valleys with blazing fire, prisons for those rogue angels, places of torment prepped for the wicked. This cosmic geography, it's got a moral dimension, all right. The parables introduce the Son of Man in extraordinary terms. The sources state his head was white as wool. Beside him was another whose countenance had a human appearance, but his face was full of grace like one of the holy angels. This Son of Man existed before the sun, and the signs were even a thought, before the stars of heaven were spun into being. His name was uttered before the Lord of Spirits before the world's creation. He'll be a light to the Gentiles and a beacon of hope for the suffering. The judgment he'll execute? It's final. The sources describe how kings and the powerful will be handed over to angels for their punishment. They'll beg for mercy but find none. Those who oppressed, they'll be oppressed. Those who scorned, they'll be scorned. Enoch's epistle delivers direct exhortations. The sources preserve, "Do not fear, souls of the righteous, and have hope, you who have died in righteousness. Do not grieve because your souls have descended to Sheol in sorrow. Your righteousness will be an abundant reward." The warnings to sinners, they're brutal. The sources say, "Woe to you who consume the sweat of the righteous. Woe to you who drink water from every spring. Your riches will be stripped away. Your pleasures will turn to torment." After digging through the wild, improbable story of how the Book of Enoch survived Rome's attempts to bury it, the crucial question hits you. How do we fold this knowledge into our understanding of faith and history? First reconciliation we need to make between the text we have and the text we lost. The Book of Enoch we're holding, it's a miracle of survival, sure, but it's also just a piece of a much bigger puzzle. Other Enochic texts existed, then poof, gone. Other interpretations bloomed, then faded. We gotta celebrate what made it without forgetting what didn't. The Ethiopian tradition kept the most complete version, but even that's just one branch of a much vaster tree. A little humility about those losses? That's appropriate. Second, reconciliation between different Christian traditions. Enoch is canonical for the Ethiopian Church, but not for others. That difference? It's legitimate diversity, not one side being right and the other wrong. The Ethiopian Church isn't wrong for including Enoch. Western churches aren't necessarily wrong for leaving it out. Different communities, in different eras, made different calls. All those calls had reasons, even if we might judge some as better than others. You can look at this diversity as a problem, or as a treasure. I lean towards treasure. Christianity's always been diverse. The differences between traditions, they represent different focus points, different experiences, different accumulated wisdoms. We can learn from each other. Third, reconciliation between institutional faith and charismatic revelation. Enoch represents a model where individuals can get extraordinary insights outside the official channels. That model? It creates tension with structures that want to centralize authority. But that tension doesn't have to be destructive. Institutions offer stability, continuity, community vetting, charismatic experience. That brings freshness, renewal, prophetic correction. We need both. Balancing them, that's the permanent challenge. The Book of Enoch reminds us that revelation can't be completely caged, but also, its preservation by an institution like the Ethiopian Church shows that institutions can be guardians of invaluable knowledge. It's institution versus charisma, a constant balancing act. The fourth challenge we face is squaring intellectual curiosity with spiritual commitment. A lot of folks come to the Book of Enoch out of simple curiosity, hunting for hidden secrets or forbidden knowledge. That curiosity is valid, sure, but it only gets you so far. The Book of Enoch wasn't some bedtime story for its original writers and readers. This was sacred revelation, explaining the cosmos, our place in it, the whole human condition. Just chasing it for kicks, you miss the point entirely. The spiritual depth of this text demands respect, even if you don't buy into every single premise. At the same time, spiritual commitment doesn't mean you check your brain at the door. The sharpest minds studying this stuff, they blend hardcore technical scholarship with a real religious sensibility. Faith and study aren't at odds. They feed each other, make each other stronger. The fifth reckoning is with what Rome tore down, and what Rome actually built. It'd be easy, real easy, to paint this whole saga as good guys versus bad guys, with Rome as the big villain trying to bury the truth. But the reality? It's always a lot messier than that. See, Rome also preserved those manuscripts that made it through in European libraries, the textual tradition of the New Testament, the institutional backbone that allowed the faith to be passed down. All of it owes a debt to the structures Rome put in place. We can mourn the fact that Rome sidelined the Book of Enoch without denying that Rome also played a part in saving other invaluable stuff. History, man, it rarely gives you pure heroes and absolute villains. More often, you get complicated players making tough calls with consequences that cut both ways. The Book of Enoch survived. That's the bottom line, isn't it? It didn't survive as a win for one side over another. It survived as proof that truth, real truth, finds a way. What was suppressed? It surfaced. What was forgotten? It was remembered. What seemed lost? It was found. We've walked through an extraordinary tale of survival against impossible odds. From the Jewish communities who first revered the Book of Enoch, to the Ethiopian monks who kept it safe for centuries. From the choices that nearly wiped it out to the stunning moment it was finally rediscovered. The Book of Enoch survived Rome's grasp. That simple fact, it holds depths we've only just begun to scratch the surface of. It survived because some truths just flat out refuse to die. Because genuine knowledge, it always finds a crack to slip through. Because there are always guardians standing guard, ready to protect what others want to obliterate. Because the very diversity of Christianity, often seen as a problem, turned out to be its salvation. If Ethiopia had gone down the same road as the West, the Book of Enoch would be gone, vanished completely. We'd have nothing but scattered fragments, quotes in other texts, whispers of something that once was. But Ethiopia didn't take that road, and thanks to that, the full text made it. Those monks in the Ethiopian mountains, copying this text generation after generation, they had no clue they were performing a world historical service. They were just preserving their sacred scripture, doing their religious duty, passing on what they'd been given, their quiet fidelity. It safeguarded a treasure for all humanity, the rediscovery of the Book of Enoch. It blew open our understanding of Christianity's origins. It laid bare connections between Judaism and early Christianity that we could only guess at before. It lit up the New Testament's backdrop in ways that deepen our comprehension. It pried open windows to spiritual worlds that would otherwise stay locked tight. What Rome tried to wipe off the map is now more available than ever. Translations? You can find them in a dozen languages. Academic studies? They're everywhere. Anyone with enough curiosity can pick up the text once deemed too damn dangerous for the common folk. This democratization of knowledge, that's one of the real wins of our time. Secrets hoarded by elites for centuries are now within everyone's reach. The power to decide what gets known has been spread around. The truth that survived Rome's heavy hand now survives in countless hands reaching for it. If you've made it this far, you're part of this story. By digging for this knowledge, by putting in the time to understand it, by refusing to just accept that some texts aren't worth knowing, you've become an heir to a quest that spans millennia. The journey doesn't end here, not by a long shot. The Book of Enoch holds depths a single exploration can't possibly plumb. The Ethiopian tradition offers insights we've barely scratched. The questions this text kicks up, they're still wide open, begging for continuous reflection. So, we've hit the end of this extraordinary trek into the Book of Enoch, the apocryphal gospel that stared down Rome and won. If you've stuck with it this far, it's because you're one of those who value genuine knowledge, who respect texts that beat the odds, who get that truth finds a way, even when power tries to choke it out. This channel, it exists for folks exactly like you. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. We've got a whole lot more to dig into together. Lost texts, forgotten traditions, knowledge that deserves to be dragged back into the light. Your company on this road, it means everything. Hit that bell icon so you don't miss a single video. And right now, another video is going to pop up on your screen, ready to keep expanding your view on the mysteries of ancient scriptures. Don't stop here. The search for truth, that never really ends. The Book of Enoch waited, patiently, for centuries. It outlasted those who wanted it gone. It crossed oceans and millennia to reach us. And now, it's right here for you. Ethiopian monks guarded this knowledge when nobody else would. Explorers brought it back when the West had let it slip away. Scholars confirmed its ancient pedigree when some were still doubting. And now you know it. The chain of transmission, it keeps going. The knowledge that survived Rome, now it survives in you. Honor that legacy, share what you've learned, and never stop digging for the truth no matter who tried to bury it.